My grandson yelled, "Grandma, apologize to my dog right now or get out of my house." I stood up and stared straight into his eyes. He smirked like he'd already won. I said only 3 words and left. 2 weeks later, he was banging on my door, desperate. "I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached." I never thought my own grandson would choose a dog over me. The October afternoon sun streamed through Otto's floor-to-ceiling windows as I climbed the 3 flights of stairs to his trendy downtown apartment. At 66, those steps weren't getting any easier, but I'd made this journey every other Sunday for the past 2 years. It was our tradition, or at least it used to be. I knocked softly on the heavy wooden door, already hearing Buster's high-pitched yapping from inside. That little white Maltese had more energy than a toddler on sugar and about as much sense. The door swung open, and there stood Otto, my 22-year-old grandson, looking annoyed before he even saw me. "Oh, hey, Grandma Teresa." His tone was flat, distracted. He stepped aside to let me in, but I could tell his heart wasn't in it. "Hello, sweetheart." I kissed his cheek, noting how he barely bent down to accommodate my height anymore. "How was your week? Busy?" "Work's been crazy." He was already walking toward his kitchen, leaving me standing in the entryway like a stranger. The apartment always made me feel out of place. Everything was so modern, so cold. Gray walls, black furniture, those strange light fixtures that looked like metal spiders hanging from the ceiling. Not a single family photo anywhere. The only warmth came from that ridiculous little dog who was currently spinning in circles on the white leather couch. "I brought you some of those chocolate chip cookies you used to love," I said, holding up the tin container I'd spent the morning preparing. "The ones with the pecans." Otto barely glanced at it. "Thanks. Just put them on the counter." I set the tin down carefully, trying not to let his indifference sting. This wasn't the same boy who used to run to my house every day after school, who begged me to teach him how to bake, who called me his best friend. That boy had disappeared somewhere along the way, replaced by this distant stranger who treated me like an obligation. Buster jumped down from the couch and trotted over to investigate the newcomer. I'd always been good with animals, so I reached down to pet him. But as I shifted my weight, my foot accidentally bumped his tiny paw. The dog let out a dramatic yelp, more surprise than pain, and skittered backward. What happened next will be burned into my memory forever. "Grandma," Otto's voice exploded across the room. "What the hell?" I looked up, startled by the fury in his face. "I'm sorry, honey. I didn't mean... You need to apologize to Buster right now." I blinked, certain I'd misunderstood. "Excuse me?" Otto stormed over, scooping up the dog and cradling him like he was injured. "You stepped on him. He could have been seriously hurt." "Otto, it was an accident. I barely touched." "I don't care if it was an accident." His voice rose higher, and I could see the veins in his neck standing out. "You need to apologize to him right now or get out of my house." The words hit me like a slap across the face. I stood there in his pristine living room, this woman who had changed his diapers, who had walked him to school every day when his parents were too busy, who had saved every dollar to buy him the bicycle he wanted for his 10th birthday, and he was demanding I apologize to a dog. "Otto," I said slowly, my voice steady despite the earthquake happening in my chest. "You're asking me to apologize to a dog?" "Yes, Buster is family to me. He's more important than..." He caught himself, but the damage was done. "More important than me." That's what he'd been about to say. I looked at my grandson. Really looked at him. When had he become this person? When had I become so disposable to him, the boy I'd raised during countless summers,
who I'd supported through every scraped knee and broken heart, was now treating me like I was less valuable than a 4 PB ball of fur. The silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. Buster had stopped whimpering and was now wagging his tail, completely oblivious to the destruction he'd caused. Otto held him tighter, his jaw set in stubborn defiance. I could have argued. I could have reminded him of everything I'd done for him, every sacrifice I'd made. I could have pointed out the hypocrisy of demanding respect for a dog while showing none to his own grandmother. I could have fought, but I didn't. Instead, I reached for my purse with hands that were steadier than I felt. I adjusted the strap over my shoulder and looked my grandson directly in the eyes. Those eyes that used to light up when he saw me, that used to beg me for just one more story, one more cookie, one more hug. "All right, Otto," I said quietly, just 3 words. But in my voice, there was something he'd never heard before, something final. He must have sensed it too, because his expression shifted slightly. "Grandma, I just think no need to explain, sweetheart." I kept my voice gentle, almost serene. "I understand perfectly." I turned toward the door, my movements deliberate and unhurried. Behind me, I heard Otto clear his throat. "So are you going to apologize to Buster or what?" I paused with my hand on the doorknob, but didn't turn around. "Goodbye, Otto." The door clicked shut behind me with a soft finality that seemed to echo in the hallway. I stood there for a moment, listening to the muffled sounds from inside. Otto's footsteps, the dog's renewed yapping, the distant hum of his expensive sound system. Then I walked to the elevator, pressed the button, and waited. As the floors counted down 3, 2, 1, I felt something unexpected settling over me. Not heartbreak, though that would come later. Not anger, though that was there too. It was something else entirely. It was clarity. For 22 years, I'd watched Otto grow up believing that love meant never having to face consequences. His parents, Sarah and East, had made sure of that. They'd given him everything he wanted when he wanted it, no questions asked. They taught him that his comfort was more important than other people's feelings, that his wants trumped everyone else's needs, and I'd been complicit in it. I'd made excuses for him, covered for him, loved him unconditionally, even when he showed me none in return. But standing in that elevator, descending away from the grandson who'd just chosen a dog over his grandmother, I realized something that should have been obvious years ago. Otto had learned exactly what his parents had taught him. That Teresa, good old reliable Grandma Teresa, would always be there. That she would take whatever scraps of affection he threw her way and be grateful for them. That she had no value beyond what she could provide. The elevator doors opened to the lobby, and I walked out into the crisp October air. My small sedan sat in the visitor parking space, the same spot I'd parked in dozens of times before. But this felt different. This felt like the last time. As I drove home to my modest duplex across town, I thought about the envelope sitting in my bedroom closet. The one I'd been carrying around for 3 years now, waiting for the right moment. The one that would change everything for Otto if he only knew what it contained. But Otto had made his choice today. He'd shown me exactly where I ranked in his list of priorities, and it was somewhere below a spoiled Maltese who spent most of his day sleeping on designer furniture. I pulled into my driveway and sat in the car for a moment, watching the wind blow the first fallen leaves across my small front yard. In 2 weeks, Otto would come looking for me. Not because he missed me, not because he'd realized his mistake. He'd come because he'd finally learned what that envelope contained, and he'd need me to make it real. But by then, it might be too late for apologies, even ones meant for humans. The silence in my house felt different after that Sunday. I sat at my kitchen table the next morning, nursing a cup of coffee that had gone cold while I stared at the empty chair across from me. That's where Otto used to sit during our weekend visits, back when he was small enough to need a booster seat. Back when spending time with Grandma Teresa was the highlight of his week. The tin of chocolate chip cookies sat unopened on my counter, a reminder of yesterday's humiliation. I'd spent 3 hours making those cookies. The same recipe I'd used since he was 5 years old. The same recipe his mother Saria had declared too fattening when Otto turned 12, around the time she decided I was becoming too influential in her son's life. I should have seen the signs then, but like most grandmothers, I thought love would be enough. My phone buzzed against the wooden table. A text message from Saria. Mom called and said, "You upset Otto yesterday. Maybe it's time to give him some space to grow up." I stared at the message, feeling that familiar knot form in my stomach. Saria had never called me Mom. It was always Teresa, or when she was being particularly cold, Otto's grandmother, but she'd start using Mom when she wanted to manipulate me when she needed something. I deleted the message without responding. The truth was, I'd been giving Otto space for years. Every time Sia decided I was overstepping, every time Easton made some comment about boundaries, I'd stepped back. I'd watched from a distance as they filled Otto's world with expensive gadgets and designer clothes, teaching him that love came with a price tag and that people were disposable when they stopped being useful. But I'd stayed quiet. I'd played the role of the grateful grandmother, happy for whatever crumbs of attention they threw my way. Walking to my bedroom, I opened the closet door and pushed aside the winter coats I rarely wore in our mild climate. Behind them sat a small fireproof safe, the kind you could buy at any office supply store. Inside that safe, along with my birth certificate and social security card, was an envelope that had been waiting for 3 years. I pulled it out with trembling fingers. The envelope was thick, cream-colored paper with my name written across the front, in my brother Harold's careful handwriting. Harold, who died of a heart attack at 78, leaving behind no wife, no children, and a fortune that would have surprised anyone who knew his modest lifestyle. Harold had been the quiet one in our family, the brother who worked as a bookkeeper for 40 years and lived in the same small house our father had left him. What none of us knew, what even I hadn't suspected until the lawyer contacted me, was that Harold had been investing every spare penny for 5 decades. He'd bought IBM stock in 1962. He'd purchased real estate in neighborhoods that everyone else had written off. He'd lived on $20,000 a year while his portfolio grew to numbers that still made my head spin. $400,000. All of it left to Otto with one very specific condition. I had to be the one to oversee the inheritance until Otto turned 25. Harold had been crystal clear in his will. He'd watched Otto grow up, seen the way Saria and Easton spoiled him, and he'd been worried about what would happen if that much money fell into unprepared hands. "Teresa is the only one in this family with sense," he'd written in his letter to me. "She'll know when the boy is ready, if he's ready." For 3 years, I'd kept this secret. Through Otto's college graduation, through his first job, through all the family gatherings where Saria would make subtle digs about my limited financial circumstances. I'd watch them struggle with credit card debt while sitting on the power to change Otto's life forever. But Harold had been smart. The inheritance came with strings attached. Otto couldn't just blow through the money on cars and vacations. The funds would be released in stages, with the largest portion, $1,800,000, only becoming available if Otto could demonstrate financial responsibility and respect for family values by age 25. I was the sole judge of whether he'd met those criteria. Yesterday, when Otto had demanded I apologize to a dog, I'd realized something that should have been obvious long ago. The boy Harold had worried about, the one who needed time to mature, hadn't grown up at all. If anything, he'd gotten worse. The kitchen timer went off, pulling me from my thoughts. I'd put a pot roast in the slow cooker this morning, more from habit than hunger. Otto used to beg me to make pot roast every time he visited. "It's better than any restaurant, Grandma," he'd say, helping himself to thirds. Now I was cooking for one the way I had been for months. I sealed the envelope back in the safe, but something made me pause. Next to Harold's letter was another document I'd almost forgotten about. The power of attorney Harold had insisted I sign before his death. It gave me access to a safety deposit box at First National Bank, one I'd never opened. Just in case, Harold had said mysteriously, "Teresa, there might come a time when you need more than just words to make them listen." I'd never understood what he meant by that. But as I sat in my empty kitchen listening to the silence where Otto's laughter used to be, I began to wonder if my brother had seen something coming that I'd missed. The afternoon stretched ahead of me long and quiet. No phone calls from Otto asking about weekend plans. No impromptu visits where he'd raid my refrigerator and tell me about his week. Just silence and the weight of decisions I wasn't ready to make. But Harold's words echoed in my memory. "She'll know when the boy is ready, if he's ready." For the first time in 3 years, I was beginning to think that it was doing a lot of heavy lifting. My phone rang, interrupting my brooding. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize, but something about it seemed familiar. "Hello, Mrs. Valdez. This is Jonathan Morrison from Morrison, Keller and Associates. We handled your brother's estate." My pulse quickened. Yes, I remember. "Is something wrong?" "Not wrong exactly, but I wanted to inform you that we've received some inquiries about Mr. Morrison's estate. It seems someone has been asking questions about the inheritance provisions." I gripped the phone tighter. "What kind of questions?" "Well, that's what's interesting." The inquiries came from a Mr. Easton Valdez claiming to be conducting financial planning for the family. He seemed particularly interested in the timeline for disbursement and the conditions attached to the inheritance. Easton, Otto's father, the man who'd never shown interest in Harold when he was alive, who'd barely attended the funeral, was suddenly curious about Harold's money. "What did you tell him?" "Nothing, of course. Attorney-client privilege." "But Mrs. Valdez, I think you should know that he seemed to have some inside information about the inheritance amount. That suggests someone close to the situation may have shared details they shouldn't have." After I hung up, I sat staring at the phone pieces, clicking together in my mind. Easton's sudden interest in Harold's estate. Saraya's text about giving Otto space. The way Otto had been treating me lately, like I was an inconvenience rather than family. They knew somehow they'd found out about the inheritance, and they were positioning themselves to influence Otto's relationship with me. They wanted me out of the picture so they could control the money without interference. The beautiful irony was that they had no idea I was the one thing standing between Otto and his inheritance. They were trying to eliminate the very person their plan depended on. I walked to the window and looked out at my small garden where the roses Harold had helped me plant 5 years ago were still blooming despite the October chill. He'd known this day would come. He'd prepared for it in ways I was only beginning to understand. "You always were the smart one," I whispered to the empty room. Tomorrow I decided I would pay a visit to First National Bank. It was time to see what else my brother had left me in that safety deposit box. Something told me I was going to need every advantage I could get. Because if Saraya and Easton thought they could use their son to push me aside and claim Harold's fortune, they were about to learn exactly how wrong they were. I may have been just a grandmother to them, easily dismissed and taken for granted, but I was also Harold's sister, and he trusted me with more power than they could imagine. Soon they would understand that their biggest mistake wasn't underestimating me. It was teaching their son to do the same thing. 2 weeks passed in blessed silence. No phone calls demanding explanations. No guilt-laden text about family obligations. No unexpected visits where I had to pretend that being treated like a second-class citizen in my own grandson's life was somehow acceptable. For the first time in years, I was living for myself. I'd made my visit to First National Bank 3 days after that disastrous Sunday. What I found in Harold's safety deposit box had taken my breath away. Not just additional documents about the inheritance, but detailed records of every conversation Harold had witnessed between Sarah Easton and Otto about me over the past 5 years. My brother had been keeping notes. Notes about how they discussed my declining mental state when I forgot Otto's 21st birthday party, a party they deliberately scheduled without telling me. Notes about their plan to gradually reduce her involvement in Otto's life so the transition would be easier when I became too much of a burden. Harold had seen it all, and he'd prepared accordingly. But I hadn't expected Otto to figure out the inheritance quite this soon. The pounding on my front door started at 7:30 on a Wednesday evening. Not a polite knock, not the doorbell. Actual pounding, like someone was trying to break down the door. I set down my tea and walked slowly to the window, peering through the blinds. Otto's Honda Civic sat in my driveway, parked at an angle that suggested he'd been in a considerable hurry. The pounding continued, accompanied now by his voice. "Grandma Teresa, I know you're in there. Please, I need to talk to you." I considered ignoring him. Part of me wanted to let him stand out there and think about what it felt like to be dismissed, to have your needs considered unimportant, but curiosity won. I opened the door, and the sight that greeted me was not what I'd expected. Otto looked like he hadn't slept in days. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his clothes wrinkled, dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his hands were actually shaking. "Grandma," he said, and his voice cracked like he was 12 years old again. "Thank God you answered." I stood in the doorway, not moving aside to let him in. "Otto, what brings you by? I come in, please. I need to talk to you about something important. Is Buster with you?" I asked mildly. He blinked, confused by the question. "What? No, he's at home. Why would—" Then understanding dawned, and he had the grace to look ashamed. "Grandma, about that day, the day you chose your dog over your grandmother." "Yes, I remember it quite clearly." Otto's face crumpled. "I was an idiot. I know that now. Please, can I just come in? 5 minutes. That's all I need." Against my better judgment, I stepped aside. Otto practically tumbled through the doorway, his relief palpable. We sat in my living room, the same room where he'd spent countless afternoons as a child building pillow forts and begging for stories. Now he perched on the edge of my old sofa like he was afraid it might collapse beneath him. "Grandma, I found something. Something about Uncle Harold." I kept my expression neutral. "Oh." Otto pulled out his phone, his hand still trembling slightly. "A lawyer called me yesterday, Morrison something. He said there were documents I needed to sign regarding an inheritance." "And what did you tell him?" I told him I didn't know anything about any inheritance. "I thought it was a scam at first, but then he mentioned your name as the executive. And Otto's voice trailed off as he studied my face. "You knew, didn't you? You've known this whole time." I folded my hands in my lap, saying nothing. "Grandma," he said, "Uncle Harold left me money. A lot of money. 2.4 million. The number came out as a whisper, like saying it too loud might make it disappear. "Is that what Mr. Morrison told you?" "He said I needed to meet with you to discuss the terms." "Terms, Grandma."
There are conditions on my own inheritance, and you're the one who decides if I meet them. Otto leaned forward, his eyes bright with desperation and something else. Calculation. What are the conditions? What do I need to do? I studied my grandson's face, seeing traces of the little boy who used to climb into my lap when thunderstorms scared him. But I also saw something else now. Something that broke my heart, even as it confirmed what I'd suspected. He wasn't here because he missed me. He wasn't here because he regretted choosing a dog over his grandmother. He was here because he wanted something from me. Otto, I said quietly, tell me about the last 2 weeks. He blinked clearly, thrown by the change of subject.
What? The last 2 weeks since you threw me out of your apartment. Tell me what you've been thinking about. Otto shifted uncomfortably. I've been busy with work, and Buster had to go to the vet because he hurt his paw. And you've been thinking about the inheritance. No. Well, yes, but only since yesterday when the lawyer called. Grandma, you have to understand if this is real, if Uncle Harold really left me that kind of money. You've already started planning how to spend it. Otto's silence was answer enough. I stood up slowly, feeling every one of my 66 years in my joints. Otto, do you know what your uncle's conditions were? He shook his head eagerly. Financial responsibility and respect for family values. I let each word sink in before continuing. Harold was worried about you, sweetheart. He saw how your parents raised you, saw how you treated the people who loved you. And he was concerned about what would happen if you received a large inheritance without earning it. Otto's face pulped. What does that mean exactly? Respect for family values. I walked to the mantel where Harold's photo sat next to pictures of Otto as a child. In one of them, Harold was teaching 7-year-old Otto how to fish, both of them grinning at the camera. Your Uncle Harold was a wise man. He knew that money without character is dangerous. He wanted to make sure you'd learn to value the right things before you inherited his life's work. But I have learned those things. Otto's voice rose with panic. I've got a good job. I pay my bills. I'm responsible. I turned back to him, seeing the desperation in his eyes. 2 weeks ago, you demanded that I apologize to your dog or leave your home. You chose the comfort of a pet over the dignity of the woman who raised you.
Tell me, Otto, what family values does that demonstrate? The color drained completely from Otto's face. He opened his mouth, closed it, then opened it again like a fish gasping for air. Grandma, that was different. I was having a bad day, and Buster means a lot to me, and I don't. The question hung in the air between us. Otto stared at me, and for the first time I saw him really seeing me. Not as an obstacle to his inheritance, not as a convenient babysitter or cookie supplier, but as a human being whose feelings mattered. You do, he whispered. You do mean a lot to me. Do I, Otto? Because your actions suggest otherwise. He buried his face in his hands. God, what have I done, Grandma? I'm so sorry. I've been such an ass. Mom and Dad, they've been saying things about you, about how you're getting older and maybe becoming a burden. And I guess I started believing them. Now we were getting to the truth. What kind of things have they been saying? Otto looked up, tears in his eyes. They said you were becoming needy, that you were trying to control my life by making me feel guilty for not visiting enough. They said it would be healthier for both of us if I established some boundaries. Boundaries. That was Sarah's favorite word when she wanted to cut me out of something. And you believe them, I wanted to believe them, he admitted, his voice broken. It was easier than admitting I was being selfish. It was easier than acknowledging that I'd been taking you for granted.
Otto slid off the couch and onto his knees beside my chair, looking up at me with the same expression he'd worn as a 5-year-old when he'd broken my favorite vase. "Grandma, please. I know I don't deserve it, but please give me another chance. Tell me what I need to do to prove I've learned from this. I'll do anything." I looked down at this young man who carried my blood, who had been the center of my world for 2 decades. The boy I'd loved unconditionally, who had broken my heart with his casual cruelty. "Otto, there's something else you need to know about the inheritance." His breath caught. "What?" "The conditions aren't just about proving yourself to Harold. They're about proving yourself to me. I'm the one who decides if you're ready for that responsibility. Me, the grandmother you dismissed. Me, the woman you chose a dog over." The full weight of his situation finally hit him. I could see it in his eyes, the realization that his future depended entirely on the person he treated the worst. "Grandma," he whispered, "what can I do? How can I fix this?" I stood up, smoothing down my skirt. "That's something you're going to have to figure out for yourself, Otto. But I'll give you a hint. It's not about what you can do for me. It's about who you choose to become." I walked toward the front door and Otto scrambled to follow me. "Wait, that's it. You're not going to tell me what Harold wanted? You're not going to give me a list of requirements?" I opened the door, cool evening air rushing in. "Harold trusted me to know when you were ready, Otto. Right now, you're not even close." Otto stood in my doorway, looking lost and terrified. "How long do I have?" "You turn 25 in 18 months. That's when Harold wanted the bulk of the inheritance released." 18 months, he repeated numbly. 18 months to prove you've learned what family really means. 18 months to show me that you're worthy of Harold's trust. I paused, looking at this young man who had caused me so much heartache. "Otto, your uncle left you that money because he believed you had the potential to be a good man. But potential isn't enough. You have to choose to become that person." As Otto walked back to his car, his shoulders slumped in defeat. I watched him from my doorway. He sat in his driver's seat for several minutes, head in his hands, before finally starting the engine. I closed the door and leaned against it, feeling the weight of the power I held. $2.4 million hung in the balance, but more importantly, so did Otto's character. Harold had been right to worry. The boy had a long way to go. But for the first time in years, I'd seen a crack in the armor of entitlement that Saraya and Easton had built around their son. A glimpse of the remorseful, frightened young man beneath the spoiled exterior. Whether that crack would widen into genuine change remained to be seen. But I had 18 months to find out. The phone started ringing at 6:00 in the morning. I was already awake, sitting at my kitchen table with my coffee, watching the sunrise paint my small garden in shades of gold and amber. I'd been expecting this call since Otto left my house 3 days ago, looking like a man who just discovered his entire future hung in the hands of someone he deeply wronged. The caller ID showed Saraya's number. I let it ring. It stopped, then immediately started again. This pattern continued for 10 minutes before I finally answered. "Good morning, Saraya." "Teresa." Her voice was sharp-clipped. The fake sweetness she usually employed when she wanted something was nowhere to be found. "We need to talk. Don't play games with me. Otto told us about the inheritance, about Harold's conditions." I took a sip of my coffee, savoring both the warmth and the barely controlled fury in my daughter-in-law's voice. "And what exactly did Otto tell you, that you're somehow in charge of whether he gets Harold's money, that you get to decide if he's worthy?" She spat the last word like it tasted bitter. "Harold left very specific instructions in his will." "Yes, this is ridiculous. Otto is Harold's nephew, his only nephew. That money should go to him automatically. Should it? I kept my voice mild, conversational. Why? The question seemed to catch Saraya off guard. Because that's how inheritance works. Family money goes to family, I see. And when Harold was alive, how much time did you and East spend with him? How many visits? How many phone calls, silence stretched across the line? We both knew the answer. Saraya and Easton had treated Harold the same way they'd eventually taught Otto to treat me. As an inconvenience, someone whose only value lay in what he might leave behind when he died. That's different, Saraya finally said, but her voice lacked conviction. Is it Harold was family too? Where was Otto when Harold had his heart attack? Where were you when he was lying in that hospital bed for 3 days before he died? We were busy. Otto had work, and we couldn't just drop everything. But you can drop everything now that there's money involved. The silence that followed was pregnant with rage. When Saraya spoke again, her voice was ice cold. Easton and I are coming over. We'll be there in an hour. I'll put on more coffee, I said pleasantly, and hung up. They arrived in exactly 58 minutes. Saraya marched up my front walk like she was leading an army with Easton trailing behind her, looking distinctly uncomfortable. Through my window, I could see Otto sitting in their car, apparently relegated to waiting outside like a child being discussed by the adults. I opened the door before Sura could knock, which seemed to throw her off balance. She'd probably been planning some dramatic entrance. Saraya Easton, please come in. Saraya swept past me into my living room, her designer heels clicking against my hardwood floors. She was dressed for battle power suit, hair pulled back severely, makeup applied like war paint. Easton followed more slowly, nodding at me with the awkward politeness of a man who knew he was about to watch his wife make a scene. Sit down, Saraya commanded, as if she were in her own home instead of mine. I remained standing. I prefer to stand. Thank you. Fine. Saraya turned to face me, her arms crossed. Let's cut through the pleasantries. You're holding Otto's inheritance hostage to what make him jump through hoops for your entertainment. I'm honoring Harold's wishes. Harold's dead. He doesn't get to control people from beyond the grave. Actually, he does. That's how wills work. Saraya, surely someone with your education understands that. Easton cleared his throat. Teresa, maybe we could discuss this reasonably. What exactly does Otto need to do to meet Harold's conditions? I turned my attention to him, noting how carefully he was avoiding his wife's eyes. Easton had always been the more rational of the two, though he'd long ago surrendered any decision-making power to Saraya. Harold wanted Otto to demonstrate financial responsibility and respect for family values. Okay, Easton said slowly, those seem like reasonable criteria. Otto has a good job. He pays his bills. Does he? I looked between them. Because according to my sources, Otto's been supplementing his income with regular loans from you two. Loans that never seem to get repaid. Sarah's face flushed. That's none of your business. It is when it concerns Harold's money. Tell me how much has Otto borrowed from you in the past year? Easton shifted uncomfortably. I don't see how that's relevant. $12,000, I said quietly. $12,000 in loans for car repairs that weren't necessary, vacation he couldn't afford, and designer furniture for an apartment he can barely afford to rent. The color drained from both their faces. They clearly hadn't expected me to have specific numbers. How do you... Sarah started, then stopped herself. How do I know? The same way I know that you two have $35,000 in credit card debt that you've been using Otto's credit score to secure loans you can't qualify for on your own, and that you've been telling Otto, I'm becoming a burden to encourage him to distance himself from me. Sia's composure cracked. You've been spying on us. I've been watching my family the way Harold taught me to. I walked to my mantel and picked up the photo of Harold teaching Otto to fish. You see, Harold wasn't just worried about Otto's character. He was worried about your influence on Otto's character. He kept very detailed notes about the kind of people you were raising him to become. Easton stood up abruptly. What kind of notes? The kind that detail every conversation Harold overheard about your plans for Otto's future, including your discussions about how much easier it would be to manage Otto's finances if his troublesome grandmother were out of the picture. The room went dead silent. Saraya's face had gone from flushed to pale to a sickly gray color. Harold heard you, I continued softly. He heard you telling Otto that I was becoming senile, that I was trying to manipulate him with guilt, that he needed to establish boundaries with me. He heard every cruel thing you said about the woman who raised your son while you were too busy building your careers. Saraya sank onto my couch. The fight suddenly gone out of her. Harold also heard you discussing what you'd do with Otto's inheritance when he got it. The new house you'd help him buy, with you two as co-signers, of course. The investment opportunities you'd guide him toward, managed by Easton's firm, naturally the way you planned to ensure that money benefited the whole family. Easton's voice was barely a whisper. Teresa, please. We love Otto. We want what's best for him. Do you? Because from where I sit, it looks like you want what's best for your bank account. I set the photo back on the mantel and turned to face them both. Harold knew that if Otto inherited $2.4 million tomorrow, he'd never learn the value of work, the importance of family, or the difference between people who love him and people who love his money. He'd become exactly what you've been training him to be, a spoiled, entitled young man who thinks the world owes him everything and appreciates nothing. Saraya found her voice again. You can't just decide that Otto doesn't deserve his inheritance. Harold left that money to him. Harold left that money to the man he hoped Otto could become. Whether Otto becomes that man is up to him and up to you. Apparently, Sarah stood her anger returning. You get to sit here like some kind of judge, deciding whether our son is worthy of his own family's money. Yes, I said simply, I do. The stark acknowledgement of my power seemed to hit them both like a physical blow. For 22 years, they'd seen me as the convenient grandmother, easily managed and ultimately disposable. Now they were realizing that I held their son's entire financial future in my hands. What do you want? Easton asked quietly. I don't want anything. But Harold wanted Otto to learn respect, responsibility, and genuine care for family. Not the kind of family obligation that comes with a price tag, but real love and commitment. I looked out the window where Otto still sat in their car, his head in his hands. Right now, Otto is panicking because he realized he treated his grandmother badly and that might cost him money. That's not remorse. That's calculation. Until he can feel genuine regret for hurting someone he loves, regardless of the financial consequences, he's not ready for Harold's trust. Saraya was breathing heavily, her hands clenched into fists. This is extortion. No. This is accountability. Something Otto has never experienced thanks to you two. Easton moved toward the door, pulling his wife with him. Come on, Saraya. We need to think about this. At the door, Saraya turned back to me, her eyes bright with unshed tears of rage and frustration. You think you've won something here, Teresa, but families are complicated. People make mistakes. That doesn't mean Otto doesn't deserve his inheritance. You're right. I said families are complicated, but love shouldn't be. And until Otto learns the difference between loving someone and using someone, Harold's money stays right where it is. They left without another word. Saraya slamming my front door hard enough to rattle the windows. Through my blinds, I watched them have what looked like an intense argument in my driveway before Otto got out of the car, and all three of them continued the discussion in harsh whispers. Finally, they drove away, leaving me alone with my thoughts and my newfound power. I poured myself another cup of coffee and sat back down at my kitchen table. Outside, the morning sun had given way to thick clouds, and the first drops of rain were beginning to fall. For 22 years, I'd been the family member they could count on to absorb their criticism, accept their excuses, and love them unconditionally despite their flaws. I'd been the safety net they never acknowledged, but always expected to be there. Now, for the first time, they needed something from me that I had the power to withhold. The irony was beautiful. In trying to push me out of Otto's life, they discovered that I was the most important person in it. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "Grandma, it's Otto." Mom took my phone, but I borrowed a friend's. "Can we please talk? I think I'm starting to understand what you meant about becoming the person Uncle Harold wanted me to be. I know I don't deserve your help, but I want to try to earn it." I stared at the message for a long time before deleting it. Understanding was just the first step. Now Otto had to prove he could change, not because he wanted the money, but because he wanted to become a better man. And that was going to take much more than a text message. 3 months passed before I heard from Otto again. I'd expected him to come crawling back within days, armed with grand gestures and empty promises. I'd expected Saraya and Easton to orchestrate some kind of intervention, maybe involving other family members, or even hiring their own lawyer to challenge Harold's will, but there was only silence. At first, I wondered if they'd found some legal loophole, some way to circumvent Harold's conditions. I called Jonathan Morrison to check, and he assured me that Harold's will was ironclad. Otto couldn't inherit a penny without my approval, and any attempt to challenge that would result in the entire inheritance going to charity. So I waited, tending my garden and living my quiet life, wondering if Otto had given up or if something deeper was happening. The answer came on a Thursday afternoon in January in the form of a soft knock on my front door. Not the desperate pounding of 3 months ago, but a gentle, respectful sound. I opened it to find Otto standing on my porch, and the change in him was immediately apparent. He'd lost weight, his clothes were simpler and less expensive, and there was something different in his eyes. The entitled arrogance was gone, replaced by something I hadn't seen since he was a child. Humility. "Hello, Grandma Teresa," he said quietly. "I was wondering if you might have time to talk." I studied his face, looking for traces of the calculating desperation I'd seen before. Instead, I saw exhaustion, uncertainty, and what looked like genuine sadness. "Come in," I said. We sat in my living room, but this time Otto didn't perch on the edge of the furniture like he was planning a quick escape. He settled back into the old sofa, looking around the room with what seemed like nostalgia. "I remember building forts here," he said softly. "You'd let me use all your good blankets, even though Mom said I'd ruin them." "You never ruined anything," I replied. "You were always careful with my things." He nodded, then took a deep breath. "Grandma, I need to tell you what these past 3 months have been like." "All right, first, I need you to know that I haven't spoken to Mom or Dad since the day they came here. When we left your house that day, they spent the entire drive home telling me what I needed to do to manipulate you into releasing the inheritance." My heart clenched, though I wasn't surprised. "What did they suggest? They wanted me to pretend to be sick to make you feel guilty for withholding money that could help with my medical bills. When I refused, Dad suggested I should threaten to cut contact with you permanently if you didn't sign the papers." Otto's voice was steady, but I could see the pain in his eyes. When I told them I wouldn't manipulate you anymore, Mom said, I was being stupid and naive. She said you were just an old woman trying to feel important, and that if I played along for a few months, I'd get the money and could go back to living my life. And what did you say to that? I told them that if that's what they thought of you, of the woman who raised me while they were building their careers, then I didn't want their advice anymore. Otto leaned forward, his hands clasped tightly together. Grandma, I moved out of my apartment. This surprised me. Why? Because I realized I couldn't afford it. Not really. I was living paycheck to paycheck, borrowing money from my parents whenever I wanted something nice, never actually learning how to manage my finances responsibly. He gave a rueful smile. Kind of hard to prove financial responsibility when you've never actually been financially responsible. Where are you living now? I have a small studio apartment across town. It's nothing fancy, but the rent is only $600 a month, and I can actually afford it on my salary. I felt a flicker of something that might have been pride, but I kept my expression neutral. And Buster Otto's face fell. I had to give him up. The new apartment doesn't allow pets, and even if it did, I realized I'd gotten Buster for all the wrong reasons. I wasn't ready to take care of another living being when I couldn't even take care of myself properly. This admission hit me harder than I had expected. That little dog had been the catalyst for our estrangement, but hearing that Otto had given him up suggested a level of self-awareness I hadn't anticipated. What happened to him? I found him a good home, with a retired couple who have a big yard and all the time in the world to spoil him. They send me pictures sometimes. He's happy. Otto pulled out his phone and showed me a photo of Buster playing in a spacious backyard with an elderly man. The dog looked content, carefree. That must have been difficult for you. It was, but it was the right thing to do. I'd gotten Buster because I was lonely, but I was trying to fill that loneliness with something that required more responsibility than I was ready for. Kind of like how I'd been treating my relationships with people too. There was a wisdom in this statement that surprised me. How so? Otto was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. I realized that I've been treating everyone in my life like they exist to make me feel better about myself. You were supposed to be the grandmother who made me feel loved and special. Mom and Dad were supposed to be the parents who made my life easier. Even my friends, I chose them because they made me feel important or successful. And now I'm trying to figure out who I am when I'm not getting constant validation from other people. It's harder than I thought it would be. I found myself leaning forward, genuinely curious about this transformation. What have you discovered that I don't really know myself very well? For 22 years, I've defined myself by what other people gave me or did for me. I was the grandson you spoiled the son my parents invested in the friend who could always pick up the tab. But when I stripped all that away, he shrugged. I'm not sure there was much left. And that's why you stayed away for 3 months. Partly, but also because I knew that if I came back too soon, it would just be another manipulation. I'd be coming back because I wanted something from you, not because I'd actually changed. Otto met my eyes directly. I want to be clear about something, Grandma. I still want Uncle Harold's inheritance. I'd be lying if I said I didn't. That money would change my life in ways I can barely imagine. I appreciated his honesty, even as it confirmed my fears, but he continued, I don't want it anymore if getting it means becoming the kind of person who manipulates and hurts the people who love them. I've spent 3 months living like a normal person with a normal income and normal responsibilities. And you know what I discovered? What I'm okay. I'm actually okay. I don't need $2.4 million to be happy. I don't need my parents' approval or their financial support. I don't need a fancy apartment or an expensive car or a designer dog to feel good about myself. Otto's voice grew stronger as he spoke. For the first time in my life, I'm supporting myself completely. I'm learning to cook instead of ordering takeout every night. I'm walking to work instead of driving everywhere. I'm reading books from the library instead of buying whatever I want online. And how does that feel? It feels like I'm finally growing up. I sat back in my chair, processing what I'd heard. This wasn't the desperate, calculating young man who'd pounded on my door 3 months ago. This was someone who seemed genuinely committed to change. But I had to be sure. Otto, what do you think Harold meant by respect for family values? He considered this carefully. I think he meant understanding that family isn't about what people can do for you. It's about what you're willing to do for them, even when it's difficult or inconvenient. Give me an example. Like the way you took care of me when I was little, even though mom and dad were so busy with their careers. You didn't get paid for that. You didn't get recognition for that. You did it because you loved me and because I needed someone to be there. And I repaid that love by treating you like you were disposable the moment it became inconvenient to appreciate you. Otto's voice cracked slightly. Grandma, I can't undo the day I chose Buster over you. I can't take back all the times I let mom and dad speak badly about you without defending you. I can't erase the years I took your love for granted. No, you can't. But I can promise you that if you give me another chance, I'll spend the rest of my life proving that I've learned from those mistakes. We sat in silence for several minutes. Outside, the January wind rattled my windows, and I could hear the neighbors' children playing in their backyard, despite the cold. Otto, I said finally, I want you to think very carefully before you answer this question. He nodded. If I decided tomorrow that you would never inherit Harold's money, if I determined that you hadn't changed enough to meet his conditions, would you still want a relationship with me? Otto didn't hesitate. Yes. Even if it meant disappointing your parents. Even if it meant accepting that you'd lost $2.4 million because of your own mistakes, yes. Why? Because you're my grandmother. Because you loved me when I didn't deserve it. And you're still here, even after I hurt you. Because I finally understand that some things are more important than money. Otto leaned back, exhaustion visible on his face. Grandma, I know I don't have any right to ask this, but would you consider giving me a chance to prove that I've changed? Not for the inheritance, but for us. I studied his face, looking for any trace of deception or calculation. What I saw instead was vulnerability, hope, and what looked like genuine love. What did you have in mind? Let me take care of you for a while. Not because you need taking care of, but because I want to. Let me come over once a week to help with groceries or yard work or whatever needs doing. Let me learn from you the way I should have been learning all along. And the inheritance. Whatever you decide about that, I'll accept. If you think I've earned it, I'll be grateful. If you don't think I'm ready, I'll keep working on becoming the man Uncle Harold believed I could be. I looked at this young man who carried my blood, who had broken my heart, and was now asking for the chance to mend it. The transformation wasn't complete. Real change takes time, but the foundation was there. All right, Otto, we'll try. The relief on his face was so profound that I almost smiled. But I continued, this isn't about proving yourself for the inheritance. This is about rebuilding our relationship. The money is separate from that. I understand. And if your parents try to interfere, if they pressure you to manipulate me or rush this process, they won't, said firmly, I haven't spoken to them since October, and I don't plan to until they're ready to treat you with the respect you deserve. Now I did smile. That might be a very long time. Then it's a very long time. As Otto prepared to leave, he paused at the door. Grandma, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you think Uncle Harold would be proud of the changes I'm trying to make? I thought about my brother, about his quiet wisdom and his faith in the fundamental goodness of people. I think Harold would say, "You're finally becoming the man he always knew you could be." Otto nodded, tears in his eyes. Then that's enough for now. After he left, I sat in my living room as the winter sun set behind the clouds. For the first time in months, I felt something I hadn't dared hope for. The possibility that my grandson might actually deserve his inheritance after all. But there was still time left in Harold's 18-month timeline, and real change would need to be proven through actions, not words. The hardest test was yet to come. The call came at 2:30 in the morning on a Tuesday in late March. I'd been having trouble sleeping lately, my arthritis acting up with the changing weather, so I was awake when the phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, but something about the late hour made me answer anyway. "Mrs. Valdez, this is Dr. Martinez from St. Mary's Hospital. Your grandson Otto asked me to call you." My heart stopped. "Is he okay?" "What happened?" "He's fine, but he's been here all night. There was an accident involving his neighbors, an elderly couple, and Otto has been staying with them since they were brought in. He asked me to call because he didn't want you to worry if you tried to reach him." I was already reaching for my clothes. "What kind of accident?" "A house fire. They're both suffering from smoke inhalation, and the gentleman has some burns on his hands. Otto apparently saw the smoke from his apartment window and called 911, then went into the house to help get them out." I closed my eyes, feeling a surge of pride mixed with terror. I'll be right there. The drive to the hospital felt endless. In the 6 months since Otto had returned to my life, he'd been true to his word. He came by every Sunday, not to ask for anything, but simply to spend time with me. He'd helped me plant a new garden, taught me how to use some of the features on my smartphone, and listened while I shared stories about his childhood that he'd never heard before. But more importantly, I'd watched him struggle with genuine change. It hadn't been easy for him. I'd seen him wrestle with loneliness when he chose to stop spending money he didn't have on social activities. I'd watched him swallow his pride when he had to decline invitations because he was sticking to his budget. I'd seen him bite his tongue when his former friends mocked his smaller apartment and simpler lifestyle. Through it all, he'd never once mentioned the inheritance or asked about his progress toward meeting Harold's conditions. I found Otto in the family waiting area, still wearing pajama pants and a smoke-stained t-shirt. His face was tray with soot, and his hands were bandaged. "Grandma," he said, standing up when he saw me. "I'm sorry Dr. Martinez called you so late." I just thought I cut him off with a hug, something I hadn't dared to do in years. He held me tight, and I could feel him trembling. "Tell me what happened," I said. Otto led me to a pair of chairs in the corner. "My neighbors, Mr. and Mrs. Chen, they're both in their 80s. I heard Mrs. Chen screaming around midnight and looked out my window to see smoke coming from their kitchen." "So you called the fire department?" "Yes, but it was going to take time for them to get there." And I could see Mr. Chen trying to get to the kitchen where Mrs. Chen was trapped by the flames. Otto's voice was steady, but I could see the impact of the night in his eyes. I couldn't just wait and watch. Mr. Chen uses a walker, and Mrs. Chen has trouble moving quickly because of her hip replacement, so I went over. "Otto, you could have been killed." "I know. But Grandma, they needed help, and I was the only one there. I couldn't live with myself if something happened to them, because I was too scared to act. A doctor in scrubs approached us. "Are you Mrs. Valdez?" "Yes. Your grandson is quite a hero. He got both Mr. and Mrs. Chen out of the house safely. Mrs. Chen will need to stay overnight for observation, but Mr. Chen's burns are minor. They're going to be fine." After the doctor left, I turned to Otto. "How did you hurt your hands?" Otto looked down at his bandages sheepishly. Mr. Chen was trying to go back into the house to save their cat. I had to physically stop him and then go back in myself to find it. "You went back into a burning house for a cat. Her name is Mimi. She's been their companion for 12 years. Mr. Chen was willing to risk his life for her, and I couldn't let him do that. Did you find her?" Otto smiled for the first time since I'd arrived. She was hiding under their bed, scared but unharmed. The fire department had arrived by then, and they helped me get her out safely. I stared at my grandson, seeing him with new eyes. This wasn't the young man who had demanded I apologize to his dog 18 months ago. This was someone who risked his life for elderly neighbors and their pet, who stayed at the hospital all night to make sure they were okay, who thought to call his grandmother so she wouldn't worry. "Otto," I said quietly, "do you remember what you said to me the day Harold's inheritance was revealed, about wanting to become the man he believed you could be?" Otto nodded. "Tonight, you became that man." We spent the rest of the night at the hospital. Otto refused to leave until he was certain the Chens were stable, and I refused to leave him. As the sun came up, painting the hospital waiting room in soft pastels, I made a decision that had been building in my heart for months. "Otto, I need to tell you something." He looked at me, exhaustion evident in his face. Harold's conditions for the inheritance were never really about financial responsibility or even respect for family values, though those things matter. Otto frowned. "What do you mean?" I pulled out my phone and showed him a photo I'd taken months ago. A picture of a letter Harold had written to me, separate from his will. "Your Uncle Harold was worried that you'd never learn to think about anyone but yourself. He was afraid that without consequences, you'd become a person who took everything and gave nothing back." Otto read the letter slowly, his expression changing as he absorbed Harold's words about character, selflessness, and the courage to do what's right, even when it's difficult. "The inheritance was never about proving yourself to me," I continued. "It was about proving yourself to yourself. Harold wanted you to discover who you really were when no one was watching."
When there was nothing to gain from doing the right thing. And tonight, when you ran into a burning building to save 2 elderly neighbors you barely knew. When you stayed here all night to make sure they were okay. When you called me so I wouldn't worry. That's when you proved you'd become the man Harold always hoped you could be. Otto was quiet for a long moment. "So, I've met his conditions. You've exceeded them." I reached into my purse and pulled out an envelope I'd been carrying for weeks, waiting for the right moment. "This contains all the paperwork necessary to release Harold's inheritance to you. $2.4 million, managed through a trust that will give you access to increasing amounts as you continue to demonstrate good judgment." Otto took the envelope but didn't open it. "Grandma, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "If this had never happened, if there had never been an inheritance, do you think we would have found our way back to each other?" It was a question I'd been asking myself for months. "I don't know," I answered honestly, "but I'd like to think so." The Otto who risked his life for neighbors tonight, that person was always inside you. You just needed to find him. Otto set the envelope down on the table beside him. "I want to do something with this money that Harold would be proud of, such as I want to set up a fund to help elderly people who can't afford home safety improvements, smoke detectors,
fire extinguishers, emergency alert systems. If Mr. and Mrs. Chen had had better smoke detection, tonight might never have happened. I felt tears stinging my eyes. I think Harold would love that idea. And I want to buy a house. Nothing fancy, just something with enough space for you to have your own room when you decide you don't want to live alone anymore. This surprised me. Otto, I'm fine living on my own. I know you are. But I've realized that taking care of family isn't about waiting until they need help. It's about making sure they know they have options, that they never have to face anything alone. As we sat in that hospital waiting room watching the staff prepare for the morning shift change, I thought about the journey that had brought us here. 18 months ago, I'd been the disposable grandmother easily dismissed when I became inconvenient. Today, I was sitting with a young man who had risked everything to save strangers, who wanted to use his inheritance to help others, who was already planning ways to care for me in return for all the years I'd cared for him. Otto, I said, there's something I need you to understand about tonight. What's that? When you ran into that burning house, you weren't just saving the Chens, you were saving yourself. You were becoming the person you were always meant to be. Otto nodded, understanding dawning in his eyes. And when you chose to stay here all night, instead of going home to get cleaned up and rest, when you made sure I was called so I wouldn't worry, when you put their needs ahead of your own comfort, that's when you proved that love isn't about what you can get from people. It's about what you're willing to give. 3 hours later, we left the hospital together. Mr. and Mrs. Chen were being released to stay with their daughter while their house was repaired, and Mimi the cat would be joining them. They'd insisted on thanking Otto personally before they left, with Mrs. Chen crying as she hugged him and Mr. Chen promising to name their next cat after him. As we walked to our cars, Otto paused and looked back at the hospital. "You know what's strange?" he said. "What?" "This is the best I've felt about myself in years, and it has nothing to do with money or success or what anyone else thinks of me." "That's not strange, sweetheart. That's growth." 6 months later, I stood in the backyard of Otto's new house, watching him teach the Chen's great-grandson how to plant tomatoes. The little boy was 4 years old, the same age Otto had been when he first helped me in my garden all those years ago. The house was modest but comfortable, with a beautiful guest suite that Otto had insisted on designing specifically for me. I hadn't moved in. I was still enjoying my independence, but I visited often, and I knew that when the time came, I'd have a loving home waiting for me. Otto's Foundation for Elderly Home Safety had already helped over 300 families, and he'd become something of a local celebrity for his work. But what made me proudest wasn't the recognition he received. It was the quiet way he continued to check on the Chens, the patience he showed with their great-grandson, the respect he'd finally learned to show for the people who'd loved him all along. Saraya and Easton had eventually tried to rebuild their relationship with Otto once they realized he was going to inherit Harold's money after all. But Otto had set firm boundaries with them, making it clear that their relationship could only continue if they treated me with respect and stopped trying to manipulate family dynamics for their financial benefit. It had taken them several months to accept those conditions, but they'd eventually come around. Perhaps the promise of future grandchildren had motivated their change of heart. Or perhaps they'd finally realized that their son had grown into a man they could actually be proud of. Either way, our family dinners were much more pleasant these days. As the sun set behind Otto's modest house, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, I thought about Harold and the wisdom he'd shown in structuring his inheritance the way he had. He'd known that money without character was meaningless, but character without testing was just potential. Otto had been tested, and he'd proven himself worthy not just of Harold's inheritance, but of the love and respect that had been waiting for him all along. "Grandma Teresa," called the little Chen boy. Come help us plant. I walked over to where Otto was kneeling in the dirt, his hands deep in the earth, his face peaceful in a way I hadn't seen since he was very young. "What are we planting?" I asked. "Basil," Otto said, grinning up at me. "I thought you might teach me how to make that pasta sauce you used to make when I was little, the one I never appreciated enough back then." I knelt beside them in the garden, my 68-year-old knees protesting only slightly. "I'd love to teach you, but you have to promise to pass the recipe on to someone you love." Otto looked at the little boy beside us, then back at me. "I promise." And in that moment, surrounded by the scent of fresh earth and growing things, I knew that Harold's legacy was secure. Not just the money, but the values it represented. Love, sacrifice, and the understanding that the most important things in life can't be bought. They can only be earned. Now I'm curious about you who listened to my story. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever been through something similar? Comment below. And meanwhile, I'm leaving on the final screen 2 other stories that are channel favorites, and they will definitely surprise you. Thank you for watching until